So, welcome everybody to my series 2 of Women Celebrating Women. And today we have the amazing Michelle Ford with us. Michelle, before we start, is there anything you want to just give people a little bit of sample about what you might like to talk about today?
Well, hi, Franny, and thanks for having me on your podcast. This is my first time on a podcast, so I'm feeling very celebrity, yeah, I want to talk about some of the spiritual insights that, we do share quite often, and we do have some time together that we do share these spiritual moments. And I think that, yeah, I would like to share some of those, talk about some of those moments that we have, some of the things that I've developed over the years, how I have developed into my own life of living a really joyful life and following some of the concepts that we talk about, and finding that things come flow easily to me, and that I'm just having lots of fun. So yeah.
I love it. Do you know what it's reminded me of? And it's like the first sort of few times I saw you on social media, and you always were like, you were always at the beach, and like you were like I think it's bodyboarding or surfing, I can't remember which one it was, but it was like,
yeah.
And I think this was kind of 2020, which for a lot of people wasn't necessarily like the easiest of years, and like I was like, wow, Michelle's like really, she's really out there. She's definitely found her ease and flow in a time where lots of people weren't. And I think I remember like a post you did, and it was something, maybe you had a camper van or something. There was just a post about that kind of life of like, I get to choose, I get to decide on like what my reality looks like. Absolutely.
I mean 2020 was hard for everybody. I'm not going to say it was really easy, and I was actually went into 2020. I'd just been to Mexico to train as a yoga teacher. I just literally just run away from everything. I gave up my career, I gave up my husband, I gave up my home, I sold my house. I literally just had a complete change. Came back in the January 2020 thinking, yeah, this is it. I'm going to be a yoga teacher. I'm going to do this. And then COVID hit and everything kind of shut down. So like everybody else, I had this kind of stalling where I was like, oh, okay, so that's not happening. So let's review this. And that's when I really started to, that's when I joined the collective. I met lots of people, met you, met lots of other people in the collective, and really started to pick up on the things that I'd already been doing for quite a lot of years. I mean, I was working as a clairvoyant medium when I was in my 20s. I'd been doing rescue channeling work when I was in my 20s. I'd been doing readings on psychic fairs. I'd been very involved in this. I mean, I got married in a spiritualist church in the early 90s, so I've been very involved in spiritual development. And it kind of came to the fore, I think, for everybody in 2020. It's like we went to bed, and then one day we got up and everybody was speaking my language, and it was like, oh, this is great. Everybody, I don't have to hold any of this. It was like a mask coming off. It was like, oh, I can talk about all this stuff with everybody now. And that's when I really started to get into that ease and flow. And yeah, one of the first things I did was, I was lucky enough to work through all these all these things about me, really, that were kind of, I had to look at. It was a lot of inner work, and some people might call it a dark night of the soul. I had to really go into myself. I had to work through all these feelings. I using some of Nick Bro's techniques, I cleared a massive issue of abandonment that I didn't even know was sitting there, and just letting that go, I changed the person I was. I changed in a second to a completely different person, and that really turned my life around. And then I started to manifest, then consciously manifesting, whereas before it was kind of, it was like, trying to swim. Really haphazard. Really just trying to use affirmations rather than the feelings. And it was like, oh yeah, if I kind of felt that if I said it enough times, and I believed that believed it when I said it, that was going to make it happen. Now I know it's a completely different ball game, really, about how we manifest. So I manifested you know, the perfect relationship. Nobody could have told me it was going to be my husband. We were going to rekindle our relationship and it was going to turn into this fantastic relationship. We moved to be by the sea, and I surf and a bodyboard, and I got a surfboard in lockdown and started to try and get on it, and it's just so much fun. We got a camper van, and then we got a dog, so we're just really having fun. And then just things just really, you know, when you start to get into this work and you start to listen to the signals, and of course I've always had somebody chirping away in the background for the last, you know, you laugh at me because I just take it so naturally that there's this voice that just kind of guides me, and I've become so much more aware of listening to that voice and feeling into those ideas and those inspirations, because they happen all the time. But it's that, for me anyway, I don't know if you find this, that it's not so much a logical thought process anymore of, oh, do I want that or do I want this? It's a, how does that feel? If I want that, how would that feel? How would I feel about that or this option? So when two options come up, it's about feeling.
It's so it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think there's so many things you said there I feel like I could touch on, but I'm going to stay with where we are right now, which is I definitely kind of think about my upbringing, kind of growing up in the UK in the 70s and 80s, and very much been taught that we had to kind of like be able to logically like think through things and think through the pros and cons and all of that. And I'm not saying there's like value in like a kind of intellectual kind of exploration, but like learning to kind of tune into your inner guidance and learning to kind of really feel your bodily response to something, and like going, okay, I've got two decisions here. Which option feels more, where does my body want to go with this? How does that feel? And I think, you know, it just can be so, it just opens us up so much more. And there's something for me, like when you're talking about like in the kind of inner child work that you did, which is that kind of clearing and really kind of developing that inner relationship that we have with ourselves and different versions of ourselves, that actually our body is like all of those different versions of ourselves coming together, and like when we're listening to our body, we're listening to those versions of ourselves that are going, you know, that kind of excitement that we feel, that's that inner child feeling excited because we're doing something, or, you know, when our inner child is really kind of you know, happy and feels sort of well cared for, they're so aligned with our kind of inner guidance and our inner being, and so it's like both that, it's such a beautiful experience, isn't it? It's like, so tell me more about your this inner voice that you kind of tune into, like how does that, you know, just thinking about your everyday life, what would you say you do that kind of really helps or like reminds you to tune into that?
Well, I think every day is, there's certain moments of every day where I take that time. So sort of driving, it sounds crazy, but driving to work is one of my favorite things, because I do live by the sea, and I do this really funny thing that nobody knows. I've never told anybody this before.
Love, this is a world exclusive.
As I go a different route. So there's a really easy way to go to work. There's a straight road straight to my work, and I work with children. So the inner child is kind of always there, because it's always reflected at me, you know, there's just children. But to make sure that I'm kind of buoyant when I get there, because I don't want to, you know, I take this other route to work, and I turn right off this main road, and when I turn right, the first thing I can see is the street, but then at the end of the street is the North Sea. And so I turn right and I say, hello, sea. And then I turn, and then I go through some more streets, and then I get back onto the promenade or the esplanade. And then I drive down the esplanade where I can see, you know, there's a big drop, but there's the esplanade, the sea's down there, and I can see the beach, and I say hello to the sea every day and say hello, sea. And then I go around the corner to where my gym is, and I say hi, CrossFit. And then because they're two places that I really love that really give me lots of energy. And you know, keep me really connected to my body and to my, you know, to what makes me feel good. And that's what kind of making myself feel good is what gives me all this. So those are the two, like,
that's such a beautiful thing to do. And so I feel so lovely that you kind of wanted to share that as well, because there's something really important, isn't it, about us having a morning routine that really aligns with ourselves, aligns with us, and is something that's for us. You know, it's all very well someone else kind of going, oh, this is what I do, and this is what, but actually finding something that you like, this is what feels really good for me. And like the sea, I'm slightly kind of well gel, because I'd love to be closer to the sea, but the sea is such a powerful presence, isn't it?
So powerful.
Get near it, and I love that. I mean, that, you know, saying that, you know, CrossFit, and because I love exercise, but like, but kind of that kind of tuning into the energy of a place and kind of going, you know what, I love being there, and I love working out, and I love that feeling, and you're suddenly already in the energy of it, even if you're not doing it. Get you really kind of buoyed for the day, because you're just reminding me, because one of the things I do, so I obviously I live in London, and you live kind of up north, as we would say,
north,
as we say, but like when I travel in, I don't travel into work every day, but when I travel into work, I travel on the tube, and I'm sure most people think, oh my god, what an awful experience, because it's so busy, there's loads of people, and everyone's else got their headphones on. But actually, I have found that I love when I get on the tube, I tune in to like my inner guides, and I end up journaling, usually on my phone, but I journal and I go, what's the message for me today? And it's so powerful, and I'm like, it's really made me realize that, and don't get me wrong, nature's amazing for this, and kind of really specific kind of spiritual practices, but it's really made me realize that actually we can be anywhere. And now because I've done it, because I started to do it, and then I got into a habit without even kind of realizing, I now feel like I want to do it every time I get on the tube. And I have this ridiculous smile on my face, where everyone else on the tube is maybe not quite in the same space. But occasionally I find someone who is, and then that's great. But like, finding that routine that like kind of feels like, this feels what really fills me up and feels really good. I love that. It's so sweet.
I love what you said about the tube, though, because it was as if you said it as if you know, you were separated from nature, and not considering that actually you're deep within Mother Nature. You are in the Mother Earth, you know, you're in the tubes.
And I totally agree with you. Deep within Mother Earth, you're kind of right in her presence. You're kind of, you know, in her space, in a way that, you know, before modern technology, we'd have never got close that deep. And I'm on the Central Line, which is one of the deepest lines, so God knows how deep underground we are.
I used to travel to London for my job when I was a social worker. I used to travel down, and I used to get on the tube quite often. I used to get on the Victoria Line and go all the way up to Walthamstow. And I've famously had conversations with people on the tube, you know, and actually struck up conversations, which is only something that probably a northerner would do in that situation, because you know, everyone sort of doesn't speak in London. No, we're not. If you're a northerner, you manage to always find somebody that will talk to you.
No, I totally agree, and I'm very un-London-like for that as well, because I'm probably similar, definitely. I love this. I love this. Go on.
So I was going to say, so one of the other things that I do as well, because if I find myself at work kind of feeling a little bit out of whack, one of the things that I do is I do the heart-centered breathing. And so, you know, I spend some time, because, you know, we're talking about connection to the body and, you know, being aware. And obviously I went and trained to be a yoga teacher. I've practiced yoga for over a decade. And so one of the things that I do is, you know, use all those breathing techniques that I know, to reconnect to me whenever I'm feeling kind of offline, because it's so easy to get out of focus of your reality, and to almost feel like you're slipping into the 3D, you know, the 2D reality, where everything's about, I've got to go to work, I've got to get money, I've got to pay these bills, what about this and this is that. You know, you only have to put on the news, and within moments you're kind of offline. I think you get pulled offline, and you get pulled into that kind of matrix. And really life can be really magical and special and creative and sparkly is how I kind of see it when you're in that when you're connecting to that space. It's there, but we can choose where we want to go, and it's what we're consuming and how we're, what we're thinking about. And so if I kind of, I do go there, I do listen to the news, I do get my political head, and I do go ranting about how bad things are sometimes, but then I'll it doesn't take long to get back online. And I think that was one of the things that I learned in the collective was it's not about how disconnected you get, what is it Esther says about how your cork sinks. It's how quickly it bobs back up again, and it's always going to bob up and down.
And there's another analogy, isn't it, about the elastic band? Like we can kind of pull it back, and when we're kind of doing that, and actually then when we let go, sometimes we just shoot, like when we kind of get back into that, like you said, space of being aligned, it just goes and goes flying forward. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I just do breathing, and I think, I know it sounds ridiculous because we breathe all the time, but we're disconnected from our breath.
I can tell you that I'm trying to think of a time when I was talking about those messages I get from my guides on the tube. I cannot think of, maybe one or two times, but virtually every time the first thing they tell me to do is breathe. And I like, breathe, take a breath, connect to your body, connect to the earth, feel into that breath, allow the breath. And then, like you're saying, that heart, when we've connected with the earth and then we connect with our heart, and it's just like, wow, I forgot who I really am. I forgot like my true nature. I forgot that I'm love, that I'm light, that I'm, like you said, all these magical things. And like you said, when we kind of have these practices, that it shifts so quickly. Like you realize that 5 minutes ago you were maybe in a bit of a fog, or just as an example for me this morning, I got a lift from my husband to work, and he dropped me off at the station, and we had a little bit of a niggle, and so we were both feeling a bit annoyed about something that didn't really matter. And got on the tube, did the practice, within a couple of minutes I was like, oh, okay. And then I just speak to him, and I'm like, I'm sorry, and he's sorry, and it's all fine. But like, just like you said, just that breathing,
remembering that, I am really lucky because I live in the countryside as well as by the seaside, so I've got trees around me, like birds, just really some of the most incredible birds. I was at work last week, and I do take little messages from the bird, from the animals that show up. And the day before, a hawk had shown up and sat on our fence near our bird feeder. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that message is. So I looked at what that message was, and I thought it was for my husband. And he was like, no, it's definitely it's for you. It doesn't fit my, doesn't fit in my world right now. And I was like, okay then. And I thought, no, it's definitely for him. It's definitely for him. It's a message for him. And then the next day I was at work, and I looked out of the kitchen window at work, and there was a hawk sat on a branch looking at me. And I was like, okay, so the message is for me, which was about
love that.
Which was about opportunities. The message was about opportunities, to watch out for opportunities. And wow, have I had some incredible opportunities in the last couple of days. Like things that, because I was worked with children for years. I've worked with parents for years. And then I left to go and teach yoga, and I thought I was going to teach adults yoga. And then that all kind of fell apart. And then I began coaching, and I'm still a coach, but then in the meantime I went into a school to teach, and I thought, what am I doing here? I don't understand. I've never ever wanted to be a teacher. What am I doing here? And again, being with children, because I just when I'm not with children, there's like something missing in my life. If I'm not spending time with children, I'm it really does feel like there's something missing. And so I've ended up working in the school, and then they found out I was a yoga teacher, and then they asked me to teach yoga at the school. And so I've ended up teaching children's yoga, and that has now developed into my own business of teaching even smaller children yoga.
Love
And
it, love
the
it.
opportunities are just, I am just not asking, you know, I'm not doing anything to promote, not really to promote anything. I've done a Facebook page, I've got, and opportunities are just flowing to me without any
So
effort
beautiful,
whatsoever.
so
It's just,
beautiful.
and I mean, it's, when I've been on this journey, everybody who I've seen who I've thought have kind of been successful, I've always sort of said, oh, you know, it's always that, do the thing that you love.
Yeah.
And just do the thing that you love. And, you know, money, you know, because we all kind of worry about money. We live in this reality where money is a big thing. Don't worry about the money, just do the thing you love. And if you do the thing you love without having any money, you know, without being paid for it, but you do it anyway, that's the thing that you should be doing. And teaching kids yoga is that thing for me.
I love
It's
that.
just
It's
the
so,
most magical thing I've ever experienced. It just, I come out and I feel like my heart's going to explode because I'm just so full of energy. And it just, I mean, I'm not going to pretend it's not, you know, it's not hard work or tiring, because it is, because it's so fast paced, but it's just absolutely incredible. And I
love
just love
it.
it. And the opportunities are just really flowing to me. So that's the thing I really love doing.
I
But
love
yeah,
that. I love, you know, I mean, yoga for me, I mean, I've been doing yoga now, I'm trying to think how long, on and off for most of my adult life. I think there's something about yoga for me that just, it just connects so many things. It like it's the things we were talking about, the breathing, the body, the connection to the floor, like a heart opening, all of that. And you know, without going into like loads of detail, there's been stuff going on for me recently which is kind of meant I, you know, all of my practices have felt really like I just have to keep those routines going, and yoga has just been at the center of all of that. It's
yeah,
just so, it grounds me, it kind of connects me back to my body. It sometimes it connects me to emotions that I didn't even necessarily know that I was feeling that. And
yeah,
sometimes it's beautiful, like you said, that kind of, and other times it's more like letting go of sadness or like
yeah,
whatever's coming out. And I think that's such an amazing gift to give to children, and
yeah.
to be able to like work with them in that way. And you don't even have to tell them any of that stuff, do you?
No, well,
They're very much, they know what feels good and what doesn't, so they're like, this feels
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, teaching the children, the young people at school, they're in an alternative education provision. So there's a lot of children with ADHD and with, you know, problems really. And to get them in the yoga studio and to see them completely still for what they think they're having a nap or they think that they're doing, and really they're meditating through osmosis really. So they don't, and they
Absolutely.
don't need to know, and they like I said, they just, to be able to see that is just completely magical. And I feel completely, I keep thinking, how, you know, how am I, how is this happening, you know? I'm quite, it's so magical, it's like, how is this
So
happening? And
beautiful.
yeah, and it's just,
Yeah.
you know, it is just, I am very blessed, and I feel very blessed to be able to do it. So yeah, and you know, things are just going really well. It's really good fun.
It's amazing. I love this because I'm like
Yeah,
just thinking about, and I'm not sure how, you know, you did mention a little bit earlier, but like feels like this is so like bringing together so many of your like past work experience and all of those skills that you've built up over a kind of lifetime of working in with children, and you know, working as a social worker, that doing something like yoga that isn't like necessarily kind of having like that talking out of what issues are, but
yeah,
it's giving them like a kind of, and it tools, just like just
yeah,
something that they can kind of, I can do my practice, and I know
yeah,
if I do my practice I feel more grounded. I don't even know if it's grounded if you're a child, but I feel better. I feel
yeah.
better with
Feel
myself.
better. And
Yeah.
that's all we
Yeah.
can hope for, is like 5% better when they, or 10% if, you know, coming out, and they do, and they, you know, I've noticed that people look different as well. So that's really incredible. So
And
yeah, so
are you just teaching in school, or are you kind of like, is this kind of growing outside of school now
it's
as well?
well, that's how it started, and now it's growing. It's just,
Excellent.
I started you know, I started a little class in the yoga studio for children, and then that's developed into another class that's starting in another area of where I live. And then because I've put something on social media, other people are coming to me and asking me to do other events. So I'm being invited to other events to do other events. So yeah, I've got a new class starting up, and yeah, and other events that I'm doing as well. So, and I'm in the process of developing a children's daily journal with yoga in it, and with, you know, with being able to work, because I think, you know, emotional intelligence is so important, and taking responsibility for our emotions and knowing that we choose those emotions is not something that children are taught especially not in education. And it was one of the most shocking things that I saw when I was doing some cover work, and I was in a primary school, and the children were being told, you know, they were basically being expected to manage the teacher's emotions, and they were expected to manage the adults' emotions. So you know, they were taking responsibility for the adults' emotions in the room. And I just thought, we can't be teaching our children this. They can't. That's not teaching them resilience. They're not going to know. They can't look at their own feelings because they're so busy worrying about somebody else's. So I've kind of got, you know, I'd like to contribute to that, because I'm not saying I can change anything, but I feel that I could maybe contribute in what, you know, in one little way. And I think life's about making your own ripples and just causing ripples. And if those ripples turn into, you know, big waves, then that's fantastic. But not having that expectation of anything, but just doing what you do, what, you know, what you feel is right. So yeah,
that's such a beautiful way of expressing it. I think, like you said, finding like your own alignment, finding what makes you feel passionate, and just going, I'm going to do it. Yeah. And I can't remember who it was someone famous who said, and they'd worked with thousands of people, and they were like, I'll feel happy if I've just impacted on one person.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it sounds like from what you're doing that there's way more than that happening right now, but like that, just to know that like we're kind of we're doing that, and we're kind of making a difference to others. And from what you're saying as well, in some of the children you're working with, that they're probably like children who might be struggling in school, or having, you know, difficulties in you know, knowing how to navigate things because of either being neurodivergent or, you know, having other issues going on. And that actually you being able to give them, I'm not saying this is kind of like the solves everything, but just something that kind of helps kind of manage things for periods of time. And then there's a whole thing that I love, and it's I so kind of I want to explore for myself about this, but this whole thing about our neurology and neuroscience, and that we can kind of reset, I don't know if that's sure the right word, but it's what I'm going to use, but how we can really reprogram our brains and kind of take them out of that kind of fight flight sort of experience that whether it's children or adults, but there's so many people who are kind of experiencing those sorts of things, and we can kind of bring that nervous system and that kind of our brains into a state of calm. Even if we just able to do it for short periods of time, we're kind of like we're wiring and firing all those neurons to get to do that more, and then it becomes more and more natural. And it's like those kind of little things. It's like you were talking about your morning routine of like those little things that we do each day kind of build up.
That's what your yoga does, is it resets your nervous system. And we are in fight or flight all the time. You're right, Franny, we are in, you know, and I think that's why, for me, that's why when our guides come through and want to tell us something, tell us to breathe deeply, because when we're breathing deeply, we are not in fight or flight, because when we're in fight or flight, we're breathing heavily into our chest because we're going to run, or we've got to get the adrenaline. Absolutely. So the deep breath is to bring us out of fight or flight. And so that resets the nervous system. And I am a massive fan of Andrew Huberman from he's a scientist at Stanford University. And he talks all about, because I am actually waiting to be diagnosed as neurodivergent myself. I realize that, oh yeah, I am actually, like, you know, I am, that makes sense, and this makes sense. So, but my routines that I've had, I say routines because I can't say I've got a routine, because I have for a couple of weeks and then I change it because that's okay. How I like it.
No rules. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And Andrew Huberman is a massive fan of his, because he, you know, he does talk about techniques to use to keep, you know, to work on my focus. I mean, at the moment I'm taking some really nice magnesium that the only magnesium that cross the brain barrier, and they do help to keep me a lot calmer. I'm not really feeling as distracted as I can do without, you know, certain supplements. So yeah, I'm really into the, you know, the how to reprogram our brain as well, because, you know, neuroplasticity, we can reprogram our brain. We're not set. It's not set. We can change it. It doesn't matter how old we are. We can keep changing it. And diet and routine and exercise are the three main factors.
So much. I mean, you know, the work of Joe Dispenza, I love the work that he does, and I love, like, you know, how he talks about how we can, you know, how we get stuck in the past and we kind of live our lives in the past, and when we can kind of bring ourselves into that present moment and really kind of calm those, like, nervous system down, kind of get that. The one I really love is the brain heart.
Yeah, coherence. That's the coherent breath that I do at work.
And like,
yeah,
there is something, like, again, what you were talking about earlier about that bodily felt experience, and when we feel that heart brain or brain heart coherence, it's a bodily felt experience, isn't it? And it's like, this feels so, this just is like, this is my natural state. And then you know, and he talks about the quantum field and how we have like this kind of, like, how much our kind of magnetic field grows when we have that brain heart coherence. That just means that we're kind of like, you know, and then what I love then is that kind of analogy of, like, if we're somehow magnetized, that means we're just attracting, like, we just attract whatever, you know, whatever. And that is, you know, there's so, I mean, there's more and more research being done into this, but I think to kind of be able to, in small ways, introduce some of this, like, to children, and then I think we have to come with the right kind of, like, levels depending on where they are and what. But, like, things like you're talking about yoga, like, yoga does that. Yoga is like it's such an ancient practice, and but just has so much that it's doing for our brain heart coherence, for our bodies, for our connection.
But have you ever felt the quantum field? Have you ever managed to get there? Have you ever managed to
I definitely have had times where I've kind of, like, had this, I've definitely felt a sense of, like, I'm just trying to think of times where, like, there's still moments now, because I kind of think back to years and years ago, before I kind of was really much. I've kind of done a lot of work in the last 2 or 3 years, probably very similar, like, timelines to you, where I'm kind of like, I'm doing this much more consciously now. Like, so years ago I kind of would have read The Secret, and then so I would kind of be doing the stuff, but not, like you said, probably more here than kind of here. But there were definitely, I mean, I still think to moments, and I still get chills about this. So I remember a very long time ago, back in the early noughties, that I didn't know if I was ever going to have children. I was chronically ill at the time, and then it wasn't working, and then I just didn't know how this was going to happen. But I just used to visualize holding, like, my daughter's hand, and holding her hand, and I would see myself walking with, like, a young child, holding her hand. And I'm going to well up a little bit, but every time I walk with my daughter and hold her hand now, I'm like, oh my God, I can feel this kind of, like,
I've got all chills while you're saying it.
Kind of completing like that. It's just like and I kind of, I remember visualizing again, like, when I was doing some counseling training again, and that's sort of around that time, that I was going to have 2 children. I was going to have a boy and a girl. They were going to be twins. I didn't quite get twins. I had, like, they're 15 months apart, but they're very close together. And it's just like so I definitely feel like I touch into it. Similarly, the house I saw it like 2 or 3 years before we had it. And then when it came, I just got it. And last year I decided I want a specific car, and I found a way to but it's, I think what I've kind of learned more recently that makes it so much more fun is I have the feeling already So I get into that place of like, I feel really good. I feel like I kind of feeling joy and bliss. And then I'm like, what feels like would be like fun right now? Oh, I would love to. But it's not, I think years ago, before I did more work on myself, I think it was almost like there was that kind of, in order to be enough or in order to be worthy, I need to have that. Whereas now I'm like, no, I feel like I'm enough already. I feel enough. In fact, sometimes I feel like, so, and then actually all the sort of stuff that kind of comes is like, oh, it's just a bit of fun. This is more ways to have fun. And like, just a couple of days before Take That concert of just before COVID, I had decided I wanted to go, but I didn't want to pay the full price. And it came up on Facebook and I got the tickets and I went. And it was so much fun. But it just, I love that when we just put it out there, think it will be fun, let it go, and just it comes in these magical ways.
That's how I got this necklace. Was I saw it on a Facebook, it was a raffle I bought. I thought, oh yeah, that's beautiful. And we'd been talking about labradorite for connection because of the recent channeling that I'd started to do. I'd started to channel in allowing things to come through, whereas I'd always pushed it away. And and that showed up literally. I knew it was coming. It was like, oh yeah, that would be beautiful. Oh, that must be mine. And then it was literally forgot about it. And then I got a message when I was out having a meal, having fun with my CrossFit friends. And then I got the message saying, oh, you won it. And I was like, of course I did. I knew I was going to win it. And it was, I love those when those ones come.
That is so good. And that's there's a really juicy little nugget you kind of touched on there. And I think it was someone like Kyle Cease who was talking about this. You knew you were going to win.
Yeah.
You didn't believe you were going to win. You didn't kind of trust it. You knew you were going to win.
Yeah.
And the analogy he gave was like, if you had a pencil, you know it's going to drop, and you let it go, it drops.
Yeah.
That's the kind of knowing, when you know like that, you just know, I knew I was going to win. It's not, you're not questioning, you're not going, I believe the pencil's going to drop. Do you know what I mean?
That you just know.
You just know. You just knew. You knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. And then I didn't know it was going to happen and then keep thinking about it. I just knew it was going to happen.
No. You kind of went, I know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's
funny because I've written Kyle Cease down because I had been reading his book, so I don't know if that's why.
Maybe. But let's go back. So you said you've been recently kind of channeling more actively. I've obviously known you for nearly 3 years, and I'm pretty sure you channel a lot of what you're, a lot of the information that when you're working with clients, that there's a lot of clarity coming through from their guides. So tell me about the kind of the evolution of this more recently, what you've been doing.
I used to channel years ago with some friends, and we used to do some what we called it rescue work, and that kind of just got put on the back burner. In my 20s, 30s, I went to uni and I kind of got intellectual, got out of those practices. And then when I kind of came across Esther Hicks, and it was like, oh yeah, well, I know this is real because I've done this, so I totally get this. And then I was working shamanically, and then I was opening up space and took my friend, but my friend wanted to do some journeys, so I was drumming for my friend. And then what I now realize was probably light language started to happen, and I was kind of trying really hard to stop my mouth from making these noises. And then I started doing sound healing. I got into sound healing and using sound in sound baths, but more of a shamanic healing practice. And I noticed that the sound, my voice was being used in that as well, but not actually in that. I wouldn't allow it. I could feel it. It wanted to come through in the actual sound baths, but I was really conscious of it and like, no. And then it just happened one evening. We were in a call with some friends, and we get together and talk about anything and everything that's spiritually aligned. And I could feel it, and it was like I couldn't hold it back anymore. It was the next best thing to do, the next stage to go for it. And I felt, with some really trusting friends, but I have been aware of working on, consciously working with channeling when I work with my clients. One of the, we all get those moments when we're with our clients where we think, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know how to help them, and I would just take a breath and say, okay, what do they need, what does their inner being need to tell them right now? And then I would open my mouth and the words would come out, and I know when I'm doing it, because I go, oh, did you hear that? And I hear it at the same time. I don't think it
Yes.
just, I hear it, and I'm
I love
listening,
that.
taking notes quickly, because I'm like, well, I could take that as well. So I take notes quickly, thinking, oh yeah.
That's so, I love that. I love that when you say that kind of commentary, because I definitely get that commentary where I'm like, oh, that's really like there's the kind of the very clear guidance that's kind of coming through and coming out. And then there's like the commentary of like my personality going, oh, that's really interesting. Like, oh, well,
Yeah.
some of that could be for me.
Quite often I'll say, I just want to clarify that I am hearing this as well. I'm not saying that this, I'm hearing this with you. I'm taking it on board, because I really, quite often just, yeah. And I talk a lot, so it's been a difficult, it can be a difficult thing for me to stop talking. And I know that's how I know when I'm channeling, because all that noise and clatter that goes on in my very active brain, where there's always a song, going off in the background. I've always got two conversations going on, and then I'm thinking about that thing I did 3 weeks ago. And I know that when I'm channeling, because all that stops and it goes silent, and it's the only time I recognize silence, is it just all stops, and I can't even think about the silence. So it's quite a clear sign for me that, oh yeah, I'm channeling now, because I can't even think about anything. It literally just all stops, and it's peaceful.
I was going to say, that's what I was going to ask you. What's the feeling you get? Because it sounds like it's something it's just would be so good. Because I know for me, it's like a sense of peace, a calm, a clarity, a kind of, suddenly you're plugged in a way that you're only kind of touching the surface of it like times, and then you're like, oh wow, like it is that thing of going, like, I was just paddling in a little pool and now I'm in some huge like ocean.
It is just, so one of the things that blisses me out, and I know when I'm in that quantum field, because it feels like I'm floating, and there's this feeling of floating, and I get that sense when I'm in water, and not necessarily the swimming pool or the bath, but when I'm in the sea, when I'm in the ocean, when I'm connected to the sea or the ocean or the water, that I am, when I'm floating. And I always find that when I go into that position and just float and just allow it, that something good always happens straight away. So I know that that's my connection, and that's what I feel like when I'm channeling, is that floating. And that's how I know I'm connected to, the quantum field, because it just feels like a floating in a vacuum, which is quite a strange thing to explain.
No,
So the first,
beautiful.
It was, and so it's quite a relief. It's quite nice, because I, like I say, I talk too much, I'm very active, and everything kind of slows down, and then I go quiet, and everything kind of closes off for me, and I get some peace.
Sounds beautiful.
Yeah,
sounds amazing.
It is.
So I'm going to just say, what one last thing would you like to share? And it could be like from you, Michelle. It could be like, is there like I don't mean a long channeled message, but is there like how would you like to finish this, to kind of really, because I feel like we've just really had such a beautiful exploration, and a kind of, it's been so lovely. So I'm just going to leave it to you to kind of like say how we finish. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Like I say, I like to talk, so ending things is stopping conversations is not always there, because I could think of a million other avenues that we could go down. And I just, I could just talk to you for hours and hours, Franny. We do have such a great connection. We do have so many things in common.
We do.
And it's just always amazing to be able to share space with you, and because you do always manage to bring out such great ideas. You always I always feel kind of expanded a little bit more after I spent time with you. So thank you so much
Oh, you're
for
so
having
welcome.
me.
And I would say right back at you. I love our conversations, and I feel like, and I've been in my day job all day, but I kind of feel like I come into this space with you, and suddenly, probably all my guides that I've probably been there all day, I suddenly feel their presence. I suddenly feel they're there. I suddenly feel this like, oh, all of Michelle's guides are here with us, and we're kind of, you and me are sitting in the middle of this circle of all these kind of lots of different versions of us, and all of our guides just kind of sitting around, throwing, like they're all throwing little kind of this bit here into the middle, and it's just been lovely. So
Really
beautiful.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. I've loved this.
Me too.
And I'll and for anyone who's still listening, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening to me babble on, but thank you. Got any questions about anything that
absolutely
I do, get in touch
with Michelle. We'll post any links for you in when we in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.